yourself. And then it comes out, they give very negative messages to themselves. They're always, again, this, like this rerun of all the things they haven't done and all the things which, how useless they are and how other people can attain, but I can't attain. And all this stuff from what their mothers told them, when they were 3 years old, their mother told them they were ugly and stupid. And so they've got this voice inside them telling them, even though they're beautiful and intelligent, you're just ugly and stupid. And sometimes I say to people, well, look, if you had your best friend sitting beside you, would you talk like that to your best friend? Would you say those things? You wouldn't have a friend for very long. And yet, we have to take ourselves everywhere we go. We can never leave ourselves behind. This is very important. Wherever we go, we take our mind. We never can escape, even in dreams. So doesn't it make sense to take with us a companion who is friendly and kind, to encourage us on our path, instead of always being a big obstacle on the path? This is why the Buddha, when he taught the Metta Sutta, the Sutra on loving kindness, he said, first, we send loving kindness and compassion to ourselves. May I be well and happy. May I be peaceful and at my ease. May I be free from suffering. Because until that sense of self is healed, do you understand? If it's not healed, if it's still raw and we're still pulling the scabs of our memories, our resentments, our jealousies, our failures, then it's always oozing. And then we have to take care of it the whole time, protect it. That's why people get so self-absorbed. It's not because they're happy. It's not because they're healthy inwardly. It's because they're hurting. So first we have to heal ourselves. Because as I said, once we are healed, we don't have to think about ourselves anymore. This doesn't mean that we become self-indulgent. This doesn't mean that we just think about ourselves and say, well, I'm in the process of healing, so I can't care about you. But it does mean that we see where we are giving ourselves very negative messages and change the channel. Listen to what we say to each other. In our mind, what do we say to ourselves? What is the ongoing message coming through? And if that is negative and down-putting, then change it. Change it to something affirmative. Because we have to heal. We have to heal and be strong and healthy in order to walk the path towards the dissolution of our sense of self. Our ordinary sense of self. When we say dissolution of sense of self, it doesn't mean that we then become like kind of mindless zombies. You know, anybody who has met the very, very greatest lamas knows very well that they are more present. They don't just sit there. And everybody sits there and has darshan. I mean, the great lamas are extremely, as the Buddha himself was. You know, after his enlightenment, he spent 45 years going around talking to everybody, organizing things, preventing wars, dealing with his orders of monastics and lay people, getting the whole thing set up. mentor is the Dalai Lama. Look at him, he never stops. Every time I hear about him, he's somewhere else. Because he's thinking of others. Inside himself, he's completely healed and whole. And so he has lots of energy over to pour out for thinking of others. And once that happens, then there is a joy. You know, it's like if you recognize that you know, our negative view of self is like a backpack of rocks, then it's very important that the Dharma doesn't become more rocks. You know, as we go along, the rocks should be falling off. We should be feeling lighter, more energized. Otherwise, you know, if we take our practice, also like, you know, when Westerners do practice, they tend to take themselves so seriously. When I was going to do a 3-year retreat, I went to see one of the Amchis here. I said, well, I'm doing this 3-year retreat, so I think I'm healthy, but can you take my tsar just to make sure? So they did, and they said, well, you're a bit weak, but otherwise you're fine. But, you know, all these Westerners, when they do retreats, they all get lung. So this imbalance of the energies. So I will give you lots of lung medicine, because you're bound to get lung. I didn't get lung, I don't try hard enough. But the fact is that, again, it's this thing of balance. You know, the Buddha talked the middle way between extremes, of having you know, he used the example of a lute. You know, if you pull the strings too tight, then they make a harsh sound or they break. If the string is too low, then it doesn't make any sound. So what we need is to tune it so that it makes a beautiful melody. And likewise in our practice, you know, if we're too stressed, mostly we get stressed because we have a goal, an aim. And so all our worldly idea of accomplishing, getting somewhere, proving something, reaching our goal, which is very ego-driven, is then transplanted into our practice. So in our practice also, we have to do more mantras, more prostrations, more visualizations, longer sessions. Everything has to be done exactly how it says, or even more. And then we're always in our sessions thinking, was that a good session or a bad session? Am I getting anywhere? That's a good one. Where are you planning to get? Have I gained anything? When I left my retreat, again and again people said to me, what did you gain from your retreat? And I said, it's not what you gain, it's what you lose. And that's the point. You know, you should be letting things go, getting lighter. So again, when one practices, one should practice just for the joy of practicing, not to get anything from the practice. Because the person that wants to get something is our friend the ego. The ego wants to be a practitioner, right? A bigger, better, more spiritual me. Then what? Isn't it? But actually the ego, as it goes along, should also be shedding. You know, the ego also should be getting less and less important, more and more transparent, less and less at the center of everything. And as that happens, then an inner joy comes up. It's like, you know, if one thought of the nature of the mind as like a huge, great big, vast reservoir of pure spring water, then as one begins to get closer, the ground begins to get damp, and then slowly, slowly you see these little bubbles coming up of pure water inside. Nothing to do with what's happening on the outside. Just coming because it's getting closer and closer to the nature of the mind. So what I'm trying to say really is that a very good indication of whether we actually are really practicing the path or not is that there should be more and more this sense of joy, not only during our strict practice but also during our life. Our life should be feeling lighter, more meaningful, more purposeful, less stressed, less meaningless, less heavy, less painful. Otherwise, what's it for? What's it for? I wrote down some thoughts here, so let's see if I capture my thoughts. Hold on. I usually don't bother, but I thought this time, since I had no idea what I was going to say, I'd better give myself some directions. Neither of these have it, so you're left without anything. There's nothing to do with either of those. So, we won't bother with what I was going to say.
Need your bag?
Well, yeah. Okay, maybe I've got it in my bag. In case I left out any incredibly profound thoughts. Oh, damn it! I never mentioned that. This looks funny. Hold on a minute. Okay, I was going to start with the idea of our inflating the ego versus flagellation of the ego. Either way, either inflation or flagellation, both of them are zeroed in on the ego. And so beating ourselves up doesn't have any better results than thinking, oh, I'm absolutely wonderful and great. Because both of them end up with a totally absorption on me. Whether I'm the worst person in the world. I mean, oh, look at me, Lord, I'm the world's worst sinner. It's just as stupid as thinking that you're a Superman. Do you understand? I mean, because it's all me. Anyway, one important thing is to think about enthusiasm. Because in any circumstances, if we love doing something, if we have enthusiasm to do it, we do it easily, without strain. A musician who loves his instrument will not have to force to practice. They practice because they love to practice. You know, golfers who love playing golf will be out there in all weather, even in a pouring rain, playing their golf, because that's what they want to do, and they don't look on it as a hardship. If we are reading an interesting book or watching an interesting movie, nobody has to force us. to read or to watch. Right? Our mind is completely gone to it, merged with it. It's not a hardship. So likewise, our Dharma practice should be like that. It should be a joy. Something that we really get a lot out of doing, and then we don't have to force ourselves to do it. It just comes naturally. We love to do it. And the more we do, the more we want to do. Do you understand? So therefore it's very important when we practice to do practices also which speak to our heart. You know, there are certain set practices which sometimes, you know, you have to go through because you have to go through it. Like, you know, many lamas insist on people doing their mudra, their preliminary practices, and then, you know, many people are already, you know, getting on a bit, and they have to do 100,000 prostrations, never having done anything in their lives. And it's hard for people to gain deep, heart-wrenching enthusiasm for it. So sometimes we have to do things because we have to do it, you know, and then we have to find ways to make ourselves enthusiastic, thinking of the benefits, and so forth. But on the whole, and generally speaking, a practice works best when, in general, we really enjoy doing it. Because then our heart and mind go towards it and become one with it. And then, you know, it's like with any practice of anything. If we are really at one with it, then time has no meaning. You know, if you're absorbed in something you really love, and somebody tells you time, you think, oh my God, you know, all that time, I thought it was half an hour and it's been 3 hours. So like that. It is very helpful for you in time. Keep your practice simple. Keep your practice simple and in general short, but do it. If the practice is, for most people, especially people who have, you know, other things to do in their life apart from their practice, for most ordinary people, if you make your practice too long, too complicated, or too alien, because you're not Tibetan, never forget. If it's too long, too complicated, too alien, after a while it will drop off. Or become a huge burden which you have to get through every day before you can get going. So, rather than that, to keep a practice which speaks to you, that you enjoy, which does not take too long, which is pleasing to the mind and the heart, and just do it. The simplest practices work if we continue them. And then that practice becomes a source of great inner joy for us. Something to hold to. Anyway, in general, I think I've taken up an awful lot of time here, I'm sorry. In general, my advice to you is really to be very grateful to the Dharma, whether you are Buddhist or not Buddhist. The Dharma has some wonderful techniques for helping us to really deal with the mind skillfully. So that since we cannot escape from our minds, we might as well have a mind that is peaceful and one-pointed and open-hearted and good-natured and at peace with itself. as the Dalai Lama says, we should cultivate the good heart. And if in this lifetime we can manage to cultivate a good heart, just that would be an incredible achievement. So, and if we have a good heart, we're happy. Okay? So, go for it. Are there any questions?
I've been fighting my meditation for maybe 30 years. And how can you once said, and I heard you on the YouTube, that we can't read in the past and the future. And so I can't be with my breath. So, and I feel that you have answered what I wish to ask you, but I'm still asking.
Well, if at this point you still feel a resistance to being with the breath after so many years of efforts, I would suggest you try something else. And not everybody, the meditation on the breath, because as you say, we cannot breathe in the past and the future, we only can breathe now. Right? So when we are with the breath, we are in the present, which otherwise it's very difficult for our mind to stay in the present. Our conceptual mind lives in the past and the future, or runs around the present making judgments. But if you have tried for so long and it isn't working for you, then clearly there are other practices you can do. And so explore something else, which your mind does delight in, you know? I mean, do some, for example, some metta meditation. Have you done metta meditation? Loving kindness meditation. Do lots of loving kindness. Get a book out on loving kindness and do that. I think you would find that very helpful also for yourself, because why can't you not live in the present? Maybe you need a little loving kindness. Constant.
What did you mean by Westerners getting, is it lung or long?
Lung is, it's an imbalance of the energies of the body. It's qi.
Yes.
Qi. So, when the mind is very tense, for example, or very depressed, then the qi or the lung becomes out of balance. And when this gets serious, it not only affects our emotional mood, but it can also have very serious physical repercussions. People get very bad headaches and so forth. I mean, it unbalances the energies in the body. So, whereas meditation is meant to get the qi or the lung flowing in the right channels, nicely balanced, and eventually going through the inner channel, if we stress too hard, then far from doing that, it creates chaos inside, and then we can't meditate at all. So if that happens, the only remedy really is to take lung medicine and find a nice quiet beach and lie out and drink beer. was just completely zoink. Beer, I'm not joking about the beer. I mean, the Tibetan doctors always say, well, you can't because you're a nun, but really you should be drinking some chum.
My first question is, first of all, I wanted to thank you very much for trying to improve the situation of the Tibetan nuns, and I thought it was very brave you challenged the Dalai Lama.
I never challenged the Dalai Lama.
But one of the things that I sometimes struggle with is we're taught to see the Dalai Lama as these great bodhisattvas with enlightened minds. So how have you reconciled seeing a Lama in this way with the fact that Tibetan Buddhist nuns have been for centuries denied an equal education? So that was my first question. My second question is in relation to this kind of ideas of Westerners and Tibetans, and the idea that Tibetans as well are somehow there's a kind of romanticization that goes on of Tibetans, this kind of Shangri-La. And that when you said that Westerners, haven't really lost anything, that kind of took me aback, because Westerners lose lots of things like people they love and possessions. And yes, they haven't lost the country, but living here for a while, I've noticed that these kind of divisions are actually getting stronger and stronger to the extent they're not actually becoming very helpful anymore.
Yeah, you're quite right.
Too much. So my question is how to go beyond. Even within this community, this idea that Westerners are somehow different from Tibetans and vice versa.
Well, psychologically they are. They are, I mean, I've lived around Tibetans now for about 50 years.
Yeah.
And I can see how Tibetans have changed over the generations. Now Tibetans are becoming more like Westerners, which is why they have a lot of angst and problems. But when they first came out, they came from a very extraordinary, I mean, it was not Shangri-La. It was not Shangri-La. But it was an extraordinary experiment in how to create a country where so many conditions came together for Dharma practice for those who wanted to. And that the highest beings that everyone respected were not politicians or rock stars or footballers, but lamas, yogis, and so forth. That was their pop stars. That was their yogis. This is true. And they had an environment which they had created and which they strove to preserve, whether good or ill. I mean, it worked out to their detriment in the end. But an environment in which they were trying to create conditions perfect for anyone who wanted to give themselves totally to practice. Now, to my mind, with all the things which were wrong with Tibet, the one thing which can be said for Tibet is that in such a small population, and it was a very, very small population, maybe 4 million at the most, the number of enlightened beings that they produced century after century up until the present